The moment Vincent Marshall's Aston Martin sputtered and died on the side of Highway 101, he knew his carefully controlled life had just taken an unexpected turn. He coasted to a stop on the shoulder, watching steam rise from under the hood like a white flag of surrender. Vincent sat there for a moment, fingers still gripping the leather steering wheel, processing the reality that his $250,000 vehicle had just failed him in the middle of nowhere, California. The irony wasn't lost on him. He could buy a dozen cars without checking his bank balance, but right now, he was stranded like anyone else. His phone had died an hour ago. He'd forgotten to charge it the night before, too preoccupied with the board meeting that had gone sideways. That's why he was out here in the first place, driving aimlessly, trying to clear his head after walking out of his own company's conference room. Marshall Industries could survive without him for a few days. Maybe it was time he remembered what that felt like. Vincent climbed out of the car, the late afternoon sun beating down on the deserted stretch of road. Rolling hills stretched in every direction, golden grass swaying in the breeze. Beautiful if you weren't stranded. He popped the hood, stared at the engine like it might offer answers, then laughed at himself. He knew how to read financial reports, not automotive diagnostics. That doesn't look good. He turned to find an old pickup truck pulling up behind his car. The door opened, and a woman hopped out, wiping her hands on her jeans. She wore a faded blue t-shirt and work boots, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. As she walked closer, Vincent noticed the paint stains on her clothes and the way she moved with easy confidence. "No, it doesn't," Vincent admitted, stepping back from the hood. "I'm not exactly sure what happened." She came up beside him, leaning over to examine the engine. "When's the last time you checked your coolant?" Vincent blinked. "I have people who handle that." "Right." She straightened, studying him with curious brown eyes. "Well, your people forgot. You've got a leak, probably been building for a while. The engine overheated." She gestured down the road. "There's a garage about 15 miles back. You passed it." "My phone's dead," Vincent said, feeling oddly vulnerable admitting it. "I don't suppose you could give me a ride?" She hesitated, her gaze flicking between him and his expensive car. He could see her weighing the decision, a stranger on a lonely road. He didn't blame her for being cautious. "I'm Vincent," he offered, extending his hand. "I promise I'm not a serial killer, just a guy having a really bad day who would greatly appreciate some help." Something in his tone must have convinced her. She shook his hand, her grip firm and paint-stained. "Petra Harper. And you're lucky I came along. This road doesn't get much traffic this time of day. Believe me, I'm aware." Petra walked back to her truck and Vincent followed. The bed was filled with canvases, drop cloths, and painting supplies. He glimpsed vibrant colors on some of the paintings, abstract swirls that somehow captured movement and emotion. "You're an artist," he said as he climbed into the passenger seat. "I paint," Petra corrected, starting the truck. "Whether that makes me an artist is debatable." She executed a U-turn, heading back the way she'd come. "What about you? What brings you out to the middle of nowhere in a car that costs more than most houses?" Vincent laughed despite himself. "Would you believe me if I said I needed to get away from what? Everything?" Petra glanced at him, and he saw understanding in her expression. She didn't press, just nodded and turned her attention back to the road. They drove in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the truck's engine humming steadily. "So where were you headed before your car decided to quit?" Petra asked. "Honestly, I had no destination. I just started driving north from Los Angeles this morning. Running away, taking a break," Vincent said. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Petra's tone was light, teasing almost. "Because from where I'm sitting they look pretty similar." He found himself smiling. Maybe you're right. What about you? Where were you coming from? I have a studio about 20 miles up the road. Converted barn on my aunt's property. I was heading into town for supplies when I saw you. Lucky for me. Lucky for you, Petra agreed. The garage appeared on the horizon, a small building with 2 bays and a faded sign that read Mike's Auto Repair. Petra pulled into the lot, parking near the office entrance. Mike's usually here until 6, she said, checking the clock on her dashboard. You've got about 45 minutes. They walked inside together, a bell chiming above the door. An older man with grease-stained coveralls looked up from behind the counter, his weathered face breaking into a smile when he saw Petra. Petra Harper, twice in 1 week. What brings you by? Found a stranded motorist, Petra said, gesturing to Vincent. His car's about 15 miles north on 101. Looks like a coolant leak. Mike's eyes widened when Vincent described the Aston Martin. I'll need to tow it in, take a look. Might not have the parts on hand for a car like that, though. Could take a few days to order them in. Vincent felt his carefully planned escape extending indefinitely. A few days, maybe a week, depending. Mike shrugged apologetically. There's a motel in town if you need a place to stay. Vincent ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this. A week in a small town with no car, no phone charger, and no plan. The old Vincent would have called his assistant, had a car service sent immediately, returned to Los Angeles and the life he'd been trying to escape. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way Petra was watching him with curious eyes, or maybe it was the realization that this was exactly the kind of unexpected turn he'd needed. The motel it is, he said finally. Mike nodded, pulling out paperwork. I'll send the tow truck out now. Should have your car here by tonight. Come by tomorrow morning and I'll give you an update. They completed the necessary forms, Vincent acutely aware that he was signing his real name, the one that usually prompted recognition and questions. But Mike just filed the papers away without a second glance. Apparently, Vincent Marshall meant nothing in this corner of the world. The thought was oddly liberating when they walked back outside. Petra jingled her keys. The motel's just down the road. I can drop you off. You've already done enough, Vincent said. I don't want to keep you. It's 5 minutes out of my way, Petra said, already heading to her truck. Besides, you'll need someone to show you where things are. Town's not exactly big, but it's easy to miss stuff if you don't know where to look. Vincent climbed back into the passenger seat, watching as the landscape rolled by. They passed a gas station, a small grocery store, a diner with a neon sign that flickered in the fading daylight. The town was the kind of place that probably hadn't changed much in 50 years, where everyone knew everyone and strangers stood out. Here we are, Petra said, pulling up to a single-story motel with a vacancy sign. The Sunset Inn. It's clean, quiet, and Mary, who runs it, makes a mean breakfast. Thank you, Vincent said, and he meant it. Really, you saved me today. Petra waved off his gratitude. Anyone would have done the same. I'm not sure that's true. He hesitated, then added, let me buy you dinner as a thank you. She tilted her head, considering. You don't have to do that. I know, but I'd like to, unless you have other plans. I don't, Petra admitted. There's a restaurant attached to the motel, nothing fancy, but the food's good. Give me an hour, I need to get cleaned up. An hour sounds perfect. Vincent watched her drive away, then turned to face the motel. The office was small and tidy, decorated with faded photographs of the local landscape. A woman in her 60s looked up from her crossword puzzle, her face friendly and open. Looking for a room, please. I'm not sure how long I'll need it. A week, maybe. Car trouble. At Vincent's nod, she smiled sympathetically. Happens more than you'd think. People don't realize how long these empty roads can be until they're stuck on one. I'm Mary. Vincent. She handed him a key attached to a plastic tag with the number 7 on it. End of the row, nice and quiet. There's a phone in the room if you need to make calls. Breakfast is included, served from 7 to 9 in the restaurant. The room was exactly what he expected. Clean, simple, with a bed, a small television, and a view of the parking lot. Vincent sat on the edge of the bed, taking stock of his situation. He had his wallet, which meant credit cards and cash. He had the clothes on his back and nothing else. His luggage was in the Aston Martin, which was currently being towed to Mike's garage. For the first time in years, Vincent had absolutely no schedule, no obligations, no one expecting him to be anywhere. The sensation was strange and unsettling and oddly exhilarating all at once. He showered, wishing he had a change of clothes but making do. When he walked to the restaurant an hour later, he found Petra already there, sitting in a corner booth. She changed into a clean pair of jeans and a green sweater that brought out the gold flecks in her brown eyes. Her hair was down now, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. "You found it," she said as he slid into the seat across from her. Hard to miss. A waitress appeared with menus and they ordered. Vincent found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in months, maybe years. Petra was easy to talk to, asking questions without prying, sharing stories about the town and the people in it. "So you live with your aunt?" Vincent asked. "For now," Petra said. "I moved back about 6 months ago after my mom passed. She left me some money, enough to take time off from my day job and really focus on painting. My aunt offered me the barn studio, and it seemed like the right time to see if I could make it work. I'm sorry about your mom." "Thank you." Petra's expression was sad but not bitter. "She was sick for a long time. Toward the end, she kept telling me to stop playing it safe to take chances. So here I am, taking a chance. What was your day job?" "Graphic design. Steady paycheck, benefits, soul-crushing boredom." She took a sip of water. "I was good at it, but I never loved it. Painting, though, that's different. When I'm working on a piece, hours can pass and it feels like minutes. That's how I know it's what I'm supposed to be doing." Vincent felt a pang of something that might have been envy. "That must be nice, knowing your purpose. You don't know yours." He considered the question carefully. "I thought I did. I built a company from nothing, turned it into something successful. But lately I've been wondering if I built it because I wanted to or because I felt like I had to prove something. To who? Everyone. Myself, mostly." Their food arrived, and they ate while the conversation continued, flowing naturally from topic to topic. Petra told him about her painting process, the way she tried to capture emotion rather than concrete images. Vincent found himself describing his company in terms he'd never used before, talking about the early days when it had been just him and his business partner, working 18-hour days fueled by coffee and ambition. "What changed?" Petra asked. "We succeeded. The company grew. We went public. Suddenly there were shareholders and board members and expectations. It stopped being about the work and started being about the bottom line. So you got in your expensive car and drove away." "Something like that." Petra studied him across the table, her gaze thoughtful. "You know what I think? I think you're at a crossroads. You can go back to Los Angeles and keep doing what you've been doing, or you can figure out what you actually want. And you think a week in a small town is going to give me that answer, maybe, or maybe it'll just give you some space to breathe." She smiled. "Either way, you're stuck here, so you might as well make the most of it." They talked until the restaurant closed, until the waitress started giving them pointed looks and wiping down nearby tables. Vincent paid the bill despite Petra's protests, and they walked out into the cool night air together. "Thank you for tonight," Vincent said. "I needed this more than I realized." "It was fun," Petra said, and she sounded like she meant it. "What are you going to do tomorrow?" I haven't thought that far ahead. You should come by the studio. I'll show you what I'm working on. She pulled out her phone, typing something quickly. What's your number? I'll text you the address. My phone's dead, remember? Right. Petra laughed. Okay, low-tech solution. The studio is at the end of Harvest Road, about 3 miles north of town. Big red barn, you can't miss it. Come by around 10 if you want. I'd like that. They said goodnight, and Vincent watched her walk to her truck, aware of something shifting in his chest. It had been a long time since he'd felt this kind of connection with someone. Most of the women he met in Los Angeles were interested in his money or his status. Petra didn't even know who he was, and that made every moment feel genuine. He slept better that night than he had in months. The next morning, Vincent woke to sunlight streaming through the motel curtains. He showered, put on the same clothes from yesterday, and made a mental note to buy something new. The restaurant was serving breakfast, and he found Mary flipping pancakes behind the counter. Sleep well? She asked, sliding a plate in front of him. Better than I have in a while. That's what people always say about this place. Something about the air out here, or maybe it's just the quiet. She refilled his coffee. I saw you having dinner with Petra last night. Sweet girl. Talented too. She showed me some of her paintings once. Beautiful work. Vincent ate breakfast, then walked to Mike's garage. The Aston Martin sat in one of the bays, hood up, looking forlorn. Good news and bad news, Mike said when he saw Vincent. Bad news is you've got a cracked radiator hose and some other issues. The coolant leak was just the beginning. Good news is I can fix it all, but the parts won't be here until next week. Next week. I can rush order them, but that'll cost extra. Vincent thought about Petra's invitation, about the way the morning sun had felt on his face as he walked here, about the strange peace he'd felt since his car broke down. Don't rush. Next week is fine. Mike looked surprised but nodded. Your call. Vincent bought a phone charger from the gas station, then found a small shop that sold basic clothing. He picked up jeans, t-shirts, a jacket, and toiletries, paying cash and enjoying the anonymity of it. By the time he'd returned to the motel to drop everything off, it was nearly 10. He borrowed a bicycle from Mary, who kept several for guests, and followed her directions to Harvest Road. The ride took longer than he expected, but Vincent didn't mind. The countryside was beautiful, peaceful in a way that city life never was. He understood why Petra had chosen to stay here. The barn came into view, red paint faded but still vibrant against the blue sky. Vincent leaned the bike against the fence and walked to the large sliding door which stood partially open. Hello, he called. Come in. He stepped inside and stopped, genuinely awed. The barn had been transformed into a working studio. Natural light poured through skylights and windows, illuminating canvases of all sizes. Paintings covered every available surface, some finished, others in various stages of completion. The colors were incredible, rich and bold and alive. Petra stood in the center of it all, paint splattered and smiling, holding a brush. She wore old overalls and had a streak of blue across her cheek. What do you think? She asked. It's amazing. You're amazing. Vincent moved closer to examine a large canvas leaning against the wall. The painting showed motion and energy, swirls of crimson and gold that somehow evoked both joy and longing. These are incredible, Petra. Really. She flushed with pleasure. Thank you. I'm actually getting ready for a show next month. A gallery in San Francisco agreed to display some of my work. That's fantastic. It's terrifying, Petra corrected, but also exciting. This is my shot, you know. If the show goes well, I might actually make it as a real artist. You're already a real artist, Vincent said firmly. Anyone with eyes can see that. They spent the morning together, Petra explaining her process while Vincent watched her work. She was completely absorbed when she painted, her entire focus narrowed to the canvas and the story she was trying to tell. He found it mesmerizing, the way her hands moved with confidence, the way she stepped back to assess and then dove in again. "Want to try?" Petra asked during a break. "I can't paint." "Sure you can. Everyone can paint. Whether it's any good is a different question." She set up a fresh canvas and handed him a brush. "Just put something on there, anything, don't think about it." Vincent felt ridiculous, but he dipped the brush in paint and made a stroke across the canvas. Then another. Petra worked beside him, offering suggestions without being critical. After an hour, he'd created something that was definitely not good, but the process had been unexpectedly enjoyable. "See," Petra said, "you're a natural. You're a liar, but I appreciate it." She laughed, the sound filling the barn. "Okay, maybe natural is an overstatement. But you had fun, right?" "I did." They cleaned up, and Petra suggested lunch in town. They rode back together, Petra on her own bike that she kept at the studio, talking easily about everything and nothing. Vincent couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this relaxed, this much like himself. Over sandwiches at the small grocery store's deli counter, Petra asked, "So what exactly do you do, Vincent? You never really said." This was the moment. He could tell her the truth, watch recognition dawn, deal with all the complications that came with his identity. Or he could keep being just Vincent, a guy whose car broke down. "I work in business," he said finally, which was technically true. "Management mostly. Sounds boring. Sometimes it is. But you're good at it." "I used to think so. Now I'm not sure." Petra nodded thoughtfully. "My mom used to say that doubt is just your soul trying to get your attention. Maybe yours is trying to tell you something. Maybe." They spent the afternoon walking around town. Petra showed him the library, the small park with its ancient oak tree, the antique shop run by a woman who claimed everything in the store was haunted. Vincent found himself charmed by the simplicity of it all, the way people waved hello, the way time seemed to move differently here. "Want to see something cool?" Petra asked as the sun began to set. "Always." She led him to the edge of town, where a dirt path wound up a small hill. They climbed together, the sky turning orange and pink above them. At the top, the view opened up, revealing the valley spread out below, golden fields stretching to the horizon. "I come here when I need to think," Petra said, sitting on a flat rock. "Or when I need to remember why I'm here." Vincent sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "It's beautiful." "It is." They watched the sunset in comfortable silence, and Vincent felt something settle inside him. This wasn't his life. He was just passing through, killing time while his car got fixed. But sitting here with Petra, watching the day fade into night, he could almost imagine what it would be like to stay. "Can I ask you something?" Petra said softly. "Anything. You're running from something specific, aren't you? Not just work." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. "My business partner and I had a disagreement. A big one. He wants to take the company in a direction I'm not comfortable with. More profits, less ethics. The board sided with him." "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. I own enough shares that I can't be pushed out completely, but I also can't keep fighting every decision. It's exhausting. So sell your shares, walk away." "And do what?" Petra turned to look at him, her eyes serious. "Whatever you want, Vincent. That's the thing about life. We think we're trapped, but most of the time we're just scared to leave." "Are you scared?" "About the show." "Terrified," she admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway. Because the scarier thing would be never trying and spending the rest of my life wondering what if." The words hit him harder than they should have. How long had he been playing it safe, staying in a situation that made him miserable because it was familiar? When had he stopped taking risks? They walked back to town as the stars appeared, one by one, in the darkening sky. Vincent said goodnight to Petra outside the motel, resisting the urge to ask when he'd see her again. She'd already been so generous with her time. "Tomorrow's Saturday," Petra said, as if reading his mind. "I'm doing a farmer's market booth in the morning, selling some smaller pieces. Want to come?" "I'd love to." The farmer's market was set up in the park, vendors selling everything from fresh produce to handmade jewelry. Petra's booth featured a collection of her smaller paintings, vibrant pieces that captured light and movement in stunning detail. Vincent watched as people stopped to admire her work, saw the way her face lit up when someone asked questions. A woman in her 70s studied a painting of a sunset, her expression wistful. "How much?" "200, Petra said. The woman hesitated. "It's beautiful, but that's a bit more than I was planning to spend." Vincent saw Petra's face fall slightly, and before he could think better of it, he was pulling out his wallet. "I'll buy it," he told Petra. "And that one and those 3 over there." Petra's eyes widened. "Vincent, that's over $1,000. They're worth it. More than worth it." He handed her his credit card, watching as she processed the transaction with shaking hands. After the woman left with her sunset painting carefully wrapped, Petra turned to Vincent. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. Your work is incredible, Petra. People should have it in their homes." "But $1,000, he shrugged, aware that he'd just revealed more than he'd intended. "I believe in supporting artists." She looked at him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression. "You're not just a business manager, are you? What makes you say that?" "Because business managers don't usually carry credit cards with no limit and buy 5 paintings without blinking." Her tone wasn't accusatory, just curious. "Who are you really, Vincent?" He could lie, but looking into her eyes, he found he didn't want to. "My full name is Vincent Marshall. I own Marshall Industries. It's a tech company. We develop software for logistics and supply chain management." Recognition dawned. "Marshall Industries. Vincent, that company is worth billions." "It is. So you're not a millionaire. You're a billionaire." "I am." Petra sat down hard on the chair behind her booth. "I gave a billionaire a ride in my paint-covered truck." "You gave me a ride when I needed one," Vincent corrected, sitting beside her. "The money doesn't change what happened." "Doesn't it?" She looked at him, her expression confused. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because for the first time in years, someone was treating me like a regular person. Do you know how rare that is? Everyone wants something, Petra. A job, an investment, an introduction. But you just wanted to help a stranded stranger. And then you invited me to your studio and shared your work and your dreams, and none of it had anything to do with money." He reached for her hand carefully. "I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry. But please believe me when I say these past few days have been the most real days I've had in a long time." Petra was quiet, processing. Around them, the farmer's market continued, people browsing and chatting, oblivious to the conversation happening in the corner booth. "I'm not mad," she said finally. "Just surprised, and feeling a little stupid for not recognizing you. Why would you? We've never met before. I've seen your face in magazines, business articles, but I guess I wasn't looking for Vincent Marshall when I picked up a guy on the side of the road." "I'm glad you weren't." She squeezed his hand, and Vincent felt relief wash over him. "So this is really what you wanted to escape, being Vincent Marshall, billionaire CEO, part of it. The other part is that my company isn't the same anymore. We started with this idea of making things more efficient, helping businesses reduce waste and operate better. But somewhere along the way, it became about market share and quarterly earnings and shareholder value. My partner wants to cut corners, push out aggressive updates that aren't ready, prioritize profits over quality. And everyone agreed with him except me. That must be lonely." "It is." A customer approached, asking about a painting, and Petra stood to help them. Vincent watched her work, explaining her inspiration and technique, her passion evident in every word. By the end of the market, she'd sold 3 more pieces, and her smile was bright with accomplishment. "Best market day I've ever had," she said as they packed up. "Thank you for earlier." That sale gave other people confidence to buy. "Your work gave them confidence," Vincent said. "I just helped it along." They loaded everything into Petra's truck and drove back to her studio. The afternoon sun slanted through the barn windows, painting everything in gold. Vincent helped her organize the pieces she'd brought back, and when they finished, Petra turned to him. "I've been thinking," she said, "about what you said about your company. What if you started something new? Knew how? A different company. One that does things the way you want. You have the money, the experience. Why stay somewhere you're miserable when you could build something from scratch again? It's not that simple." "Why not?" Vincent opened his mouth to list all the reasons, then stopped. Why not? He had the resources. He had the knowledge. He could hire the right people, develop new software, compete with his own company if he wanted. The only thing stopping him was fear. Fear of starting over, fear of failure, fear of the unknown. "You're right," he said slowly. "It's not simple, but it's possible." "Everything's possible," Petra said. "You just have to decide what you want more. The comfortable misery, or the uncertain possibility of something better." They stood there in the barn, surrounded by her paintings, surrounded by proof that taking chances could lead to beautiful things, and Vincent felt something click into place. He'd been so focused on what he was losing that he hadn't considered what he could gain. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said. "A real dinner, not at the motel restaurant. Let me take you somewhere nice." Petra smiled. "There's nowhere nice around here." "Then let's drive to the next town, or the town after that. Let's find somewhere and celebrate." "Celebrate what?" "You selling paintings, me figuring some things out, us." He said the last word carefully, watching her reaction. "Us," Petra repeated, and her smile turned soft. "I like the sound of that." They ended up driving 40 minutes to a small restaurant that overlooked the ocean. Vincent had borrowed Mary's car after explaining the situation, and she'd handed over the keys with a knowing smile. The restaurant was intimate and charming, with candles on the tables and the sound of waves through the open windows. Over dinner, they talked about everything. Petra told him about growing up in the town, about leaving for college and art school, about the years she'd spent working corporate jobs that paid the bills but hollowed her out inside. Vincent shared stories about building Marshall Industries, about the early failures and small victories, about the moment he realized he'd succeeded and the emptiness that came with it. "I thought success would feel different," he admitted. "I thought I'd be happy." "Money can't buy happiness," Petra said. "No, but it can buy security, freedom, options. But not purpose. That has to come from somewhere else." "Where do you find yours?" Petra considered the question. "In creating something that matters, even if it only matters to me. In connecting with people through my work. In moments like this, sitting across from someone and having a real conversation." She met his eyes. "I think purpose is simpler than we make it. It's about being present and honest and open to whatever comes. You make it sound easy. It's not. But it's worth it." After dinner, they walked on the beach, shoes off, the cool sand between their toes. The moon hung low and bright over the water, casting silver light across the waves. Vincent reached for Petra's hand, and she laced her fingers through his without hesitation. "I leave in a week," he said quietly. "When my car's fixed, I know. I don't want to." Petra stopped walking, turning to face him. "Then don't. It's not that simple. I have responsibilities, a company, a life back in Los Angeles." "A life you're not happy with," she reminded him. "Vincent, I'm not asking you to stay, but I am saying that you have choices. Maybe they're not easy choices, but they exist." He pulled her closer, and she came willingly, resting her head against his chest. They stood like that for a long time, listening to the waves and feeling the night breeze, two people at crossroads trying to figure out which direction to turn. "What if I came back?" Vincent said. "After I handle things in Los Angeles, what if I came back here? I'd like that." "And what if it became more than visiting? What if I relocated?" Petra lifted her head to look at him. "Is that what you want?" "I'm starting to think it might be." She kissed him then, soft and sweet, and Vincent felt the last pieces of his carefully controlled life crack and fall away. This was what he'd been missing. Not just connection, but real connection with someone who saw him for who he was, not what he represented. They drove back to town holding hands, the radio playing softly, both of them quiet with their own thoughts. When he dropped her off at her house, a small cottage near her aunt's property, Petra invited him in. "Just for a little while," she said. "I'm not ready for the night to end yet." Her house was exactly what he'd imagined. Cozy and cluttered with art supplies, paintings covering the walls, books stacked on every surface. They sat on her couch drinking tea, talking until the early hours of the morning about dreams and fears and all the what-ifs that life offered. "I've never met anyone like you," Vincent said as the sky started to lighten outside. "Good different or bad different, the best different." He kissed her again, deeper this time, feeling her respond with matching intensity. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Petra rested her forehead against his. "Stay tonight," she whispered. "I don't want you to go. I don't want to go either." They fell asleep on her couch, wrapped in each other's arms, and Vincent slept more soundly than he had in years. The next week passed in a blur of perfect moments. Vincent and Petra spent every day together, exploring the countryside, painting in her studio, talking for hours about everything and nothing. He met her aunt, a spry woman in her 70s who took one look at them together and declared they were good for each other. He helped Petra prepare pieces for her gallery show, offering opinions when asked and staying quiet when she needed to work through problems on her own. In the evenings, they cooked dinner together in her small kitchen, learning each other's rhythms and preferences. Vincent discovered that Petra sang while she cooked, that she was terrible at chopping vegetables, that she liked her coffee sweet and her tea plain. Petra learned that Vincent was methodical about cleaning as he went, that he had a dry sense of humor that caught her off guard, that he was generous and thoughtful and surprisingly romantic. They went on long walks, holding hands and talking about the future in careful, hypothetical terms. They watched sunsets from their hill, stars appearing overhead as they mapped out possibilities. They kissed under the oak tree in the park, against the barn door after a long day of painting, in her kitchen while waiting for water to boil. Vincent called his assistant and explained he was extending his absence. He had video calls with his lawyer, discussing options for his role in the company. He started sketching out ideas for a new venture, something that aligned with his original vision, talking through concepts with Petra late into the night. "What if I focused on sustainability?" he mused one evening. "Software that helps companies not just with efficiency, but with reducing their environmental impact." "That sounds perfect for you," Petra said. "It combines what you're good at with something you actually care about. It would take time to build, a year, maybe more, before it's operational." "So," she looked at him over her teacup, "good things take time." The day his car was ready, Vincent stood in Mike's garage staring at the Aston Martin like it was a relic from another life. In a way, it was. The person who'd driven away from Los Angeles in that car barely resembled who he was now. "All fixed up," Mike said proudly. "Runs like new." "Thank you." Vincent paid the bill, then asked, "Do you know anyone who might want to buy it?" Mike's eyes widened. "You're selling?" "I'm thinking about it. A car like this doesn't make much sense out here. I might know a collector interested. Let me make some calls." Vincent drove the Aston Martin back to the motel where Petra was waiting. She leaned against her truck, arms crossed, watching him park. "It's fixed," she said. "It is. So you're leaving?" "Not yet." He climbed out, leaving the keys in the ignition. "I have to go back to Los Angeles, handle some things. But I'm coming back, Petra, if you want me to." "You know I do. I need to sell my shares in Marshall Industries. Start the new company. Find a place to live here if that's okay." "More than okay. It's going to take time. A few weeks at least. Maybe a month." "I'll be here," Petra promised. "I'm not going anywhere." They spent his last night together at her house, talking and kissing and making promises about the future. In the morning, Vincent packed his new clothes into a bag, said goodbye to Mary, and climbed into his car one last time. Petra stood in the motel parking lot, hugging herself against the early morning chill. "Drive safe." "I will." He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "This isn't goodbye. It's just see you soon." "See you soon," she echoed. The drive back to Los Angeles felt surreal. The closer Vincent got to the city, the more his old life tried to reassert itself. But something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't the same person who'd left 2 weeks ago, and he couldn't go back to pretending he was. His assistant nearly fainted when he walked into the Marshall Industries building. "Mr. Marshall, we've been so worried." "I'm fine, Janet. Better than fine." "Schedule a meeting with the board for tomorrow, and get my lawyer on the phone." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings and negotiations. Vincent's business partner tried to talk him out of leaving, then got angry, then accepted it with poor grace. The board was shocked but ultimately supportive, understanding that Vincent's heart was no longer in it. The shareholders were harder to convince, but Vincent's lawyer structured the sale of his shares in a way that protected the company while giving Vincent the freedom he needed. He sold his penthouse apartment, his collection of cars, most of his possessions. What mattered fit in a few boxes. The rest was just stuff weighing him down. Every night he called Petra. They talked for hours, sharing their days, making plans. She told him about finishing pieces for the gallery show, about her nervous excitement. He told her about progress on the sale, about the seed ideas forming for his new company. "I miss you," she said one night, her voice soft through the phone. "I miss you too, but it's almost done. Another week, maybe 2. I'm counting the days. So am I." The day Vincent signed the final papers selling his shares, he felt lighter than he had in years. He'd negotiated a deal that gave him enough capital to start fresh while ensuring Marshall Industries would continue. His former partner would run it into the ground or turn it around, but either way, it wasn't Vincent's problem anymore. He loaded his remaining belongings into a practical SUV he'd bought specifically for country roads, pointed it north, and drove toward the future he'd chosen. Petra was in her studio when he arrived, working on a large canvas. She didn't hear him come in, too absorbed in her painting. Vincent watched her for a moment, memorizing the way she moved, the concentration on her face, the paint stains on her hands. "Need any help?" he said. She spun around, brush dropping to the floor, her face breaking into the most beautiful smile he'd ever seen. Then she was running toward him and he caught her, spinning her around as she laughed. "You're back." "I'm back," Vincent confirmed, setting her down but not letting go. "For good, if you'll have me." "Always," Petra said, and kissed him until they were both breathless. He'd rented a small house on the edge of town, close enough to Petra's place that they could walk between them, far enough to give them both space when they needed it. Vincent set up a home office and started working on his new company in earnest. assembling a small team of developers and environmental specialists who shared his vision. The work was hard, starting from scratch after years of having unlimited resources. But it was also exhilarating, building something that mattered, making decisions based on values rather than profit margins. Vincent found himself energized in a way he hadn't been in years, waking up excited to tackle the day's challenges. Petra's gallery show opened on a Saturday evening in San Francisco. Vincent drove her to the city, holding her hand while she nervously checked and rechecked everything. The gallery was beautiful, her paintings displayed with professional lighting that made the colors sing. People filled the space, wine glasses in hand, admiring her work. Vincent stood back and watched her shine. She moved through the crowd with growing confidence, discussing her process and inspiration, accepting compliments with grace. By the end of the night, she'd sold more than half the pieces, with commissions requested for more. "I can't believe it," she said in the car afterward, practically bouncing with excitement. "They actually liked my work. Of course they did. You're incredibly talented. Some gallery owner from New York wants to talk to me about a show there." "New York, Vincent," he squeezed her hand. "I'm so proud of you. None of this would have happened without you, if you hadn't stopped on that road, if I hadn't picked you up. I'm pretty sure your talent had more to do with it than my car breaking down. Maybe, but you believed in me when I was still doubting myself. That matters." Back in town, they celebrated with champagne and takeout, sitting on her couch with their legs tangled together, talking about the future in specific terms now rather than hypotheticals. Vincent told her about progress on his new company, about the contracts he was negotiating with businesses interested in sustainability software. Petra showed him preliminary sketches for pieces the New York gallery wanted. "We're doing it," she said wonderingly. "We're actually making it work." "We are." As summer turned to fall, Vincent's new company officially launched. The initial response was strong, businesses drawn to the combination of efficiency and environmental responsibility. He hired more staff, including a CEO to handle day-to-day operations, freeing him to focus on development and strategy without consuming his entire life. Petra's career continued to flourish. The New York show was scheduled for spring, and she was producing new work at a pace that amazed both of them. But she also made time for them, for quiet mornings drinking coffee together, for long walks in the countryside, for nights curled up talking about everything and nothing. One evening in October, Vincent took her to their hill, the place they'd watched their first sunset together. The valley spread below them, harvest season turning everything golden. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small box from his pocket. Petra's eyes widened. "Vincent." "Marry me," he said simply. "I know we've only known each other for a few months, but I've never been more certain of anything. You changed my life, Petra. You showed me what really matters, helped me find my way back to myself. I love you. I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like." "Yes," Petra said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, a simple band with a single stone that caught the sunset light, then pulled her into his arms. They stayed there until the stars came out, making plans and dreaming together. They got married the following spring in the park under the old oak tree, surrounded by friends and family. Mary catered, Mike was in attendance. Petra's aunt cried happy tears. It was simple and perfect and everything they wanted. Vincent's former business partner sent a gift with a note that simply said, "Congratulations. You were right, and I was wrong." Vincent filed the note away, a reminder that sometimes taking the hard path led to better places. Petra's New York show was a massive success, leading to more commissions and opportunities than she could handle. She hired an assistant to help manage the business side, letting her focus on the creative work. Vincent's company continued to grow steadily, making a real difference in how businesses approached sustainability. But the best moments were still the quiet ones. Mornings drinking coffee together in their kitchen. Evenings painting side by side in the studio. Long drives through the countryside with no destination in mind. They'd found what they hadn't known they were looking for. 2 years after their wedding, Petra discovered she was pregnant. She told Vincent over breakfast, watching his face transform from confusion to understanding to pure joy. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing, already imagining the future taking shape. They converted the spare room in their house into a nursery, painting the walls themselves and arguing playfully about color choices. Petra continued working almost until her due date, creating a series of paintings inspired by impending motherhood that were her most powerful work yet. Their daughter was born in late autumn, tiny and perfect with Vincent's dark hair and Petra's eyes. They named her Rose, and she transformed their world completely. Vincent took time off from the company to help with those early exhausting weeks, walking the floors at 2 in the morning with a fussy baby, both of them learning as they went. Petra painted less for a while, focused on motherhood, but she was happy. Vincent worked from home as much as possible, wanting to be present for every moment. They were tired and stressed and more in love than ever. Rose's first birthday party was held in the park, the same place her parents had gotten married. Friends and family filled the space, celebrating the little girl who'd completed their family. Vincent stood with his arm around Petra, watching their daughter demolish her cake with enthusiastic determination. "Did you ever imagine this?" Petra asked. "When your car broke down that day?" "Not even close," Vincent admitted. "I thought I was just getting away for a few days, clearing my head. I had no idea I was driving toward everything I'd been missing. Best car trouble ever. The absolute best." Their life together continued to unfold in beautiful, unexpected ways. Vincent's company became a leader in sustainability software, changing industry standards and making real environmental impact. Petra's art was shown in galleries around the world, her work recognized and celebrated. But success never consumed them the way it once had Vincent. They'd learned what mattered most. When Rose was 3, they welcomed a son, James, who had Petra's smile and Vincent's determined personality. Their house filled with laughter and chaos and love. Vincent coached Rose's soccer team, despite knowing nothing about soccer. Petra taught James to paint, even though he was more interested in eating the paint than creating with it. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to the hill where Vincent had proposed. Rose and James were with Petra's aunt for the evening, giving them rare time alone. They sat in their familiar spot, watching the sunset paint the valley in gold and pink. "Do you ever miss it?" Petra asked. Los Angeles, the company, that life. Vincent didn't even have to think about it. Not for a second. No regrets. Only that my car didn't break down sooner. He pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Everything good in my life started the day you stopped to help a stranger on the side of the road. I'm glad I did." "Me too." They watched the sun disappear below the horizon, stars beginning to appear overhead. The valley spread below them, familiar and beautiful, the place they'd chosen to build their life. Vincent thought about the man he'd been, driving away from Los Angeles with no destination in mind, desperate for something he couldn't name. That man would never have believed this could be his future. A wife he loved beyond measure. 2 incredible children. Work that mattered. A life full of purpose and connection and joy. Sometimes the best journeys were the ones you never planned. Sometimes getting lost was the only way to find what you'd been looking for all along. And sometimes, a simple act of kindness on a lonely road could change everything. Vincent Marshall had been a millionaire searching for meaning. He'd found it in paint-stained hands, sunset walks, and a woman who saw beyond his money to the man underneath. He'd found it in a small town that became home, in work that made a difference, in love that grew deeper with every passing day. He'd taken a road trip expecting nothing and found forever instead. And he'd never been more grateful for a broken-down car in his entire life. The stars continued to emerge one by one, lighting the darkness. Vincent held Petra close, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Their life together stretched ahead, full of promise and possibility. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. That was the real treasure. Not money or success or recognition, but this. A person to share sunsets with. A hand to hold through life's journey. Love that endured and deepened and transformed everything it touched. Vincent had driven away from everything he knew looking for an escape. Instead, he'd found home. And that made all the difference.